The press conference had ended. The cameras were shutting off. The journalists were packing up their notebooks. But Eala wasn't finished. She leaned into the microphone one last time. Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of a nation. And what she said in that moment would echo across the tennis world for years to come. I promise to continue to represent the Philippines in the best way that I possibly can. The room fell silent, not because the words were extraordinary, but because of the depth behind them, because of the journey they represented, because of the millions of Filipinos who had stayed up until midnight to watch her matches, who had waved Philippine flags at public watch parties, who had sent letters and messages of love from across the globe. This wasn't just a tennis player making a routine statement. This was a young woman who had left her family at 13 years old to chase a dream, who had trained in Spain, alone in a foreign country, who had faced doubt, criticism, and obstacles at every turn, who had beaten the defending Wimbledon champion on center court and become the first Filipino to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam. I cannot begin to describe how overjoyed I am to see how my progress has been received by the Filipino people, she had said at Malacañang Palace. It warms my heart because I know that it comes from a profound and shared love for our nation. And with those words, Eala had made a promise that would define her legacy, a promise that left the entire tennis world speechless. Welcome to RallyVerse. The words came at a moment of profound significance. Just days after her historic Wimbledon run, Eala stood before President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at Malacañang Palace, receiving a presidential citation for her achievements. She had become the first Filipino to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam in the Open era. She had climbed to a career-high world now, 28, the highest ranking ever achieved by a Filipina. And she made a promise that would define her career. I promise to continue to represent the Philippines in the best way that I possibly can, she said. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything she had sacrificed, everything she had overcome, everything she had achieved. I take great pride in being a Filipino, and I carry the flag with me wherever I go, Eala said. I'm a firm believer that where you come from is a big part of who you are, so I do my best to represent the country on and off the court because I'm really proud and it comes from a genuine place of love. The tennis world was stunned, not because she said something extraordinary, but because she meant every word of it. To understand why Eala's promise resonated so deeply, you have to understand her journey. She was born in Quezon City, Philippines, a nation of 110 million people that had never produced a Grand Slam singles champion. At just 13 years old, she left her family to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Spain. She was alone in a foreign country, chasing a dream that seemed impossible for someone from her background. But she never forgot where she came from. She played on a court where a basketball court had been painted over a tennis court. She trained with her brother and grandfather every day after school, wearing ruffled socks and light-up shoes. Maybe for someone like Eala, who has won many slams, this achievement may seem small, Eala said after beating Swiatek at Wimbledon. But for someone who grew up in the Philippines, I want to train with my brother and grandfather every day after school with my ruffled socks and light-up shoes. So, to me, this is everything. That iconic speech made many tear up and made ruffled socks iconic. Eala even wore ruffled socks to some of her engagements and for a magazine cover. The speech was a reminder that her journey was not just about tennis. It was about every Filipino child who had ever dreamed of achieving something big. It was about the sacrifices her family had made. It was about the love of a nation that had embraced her as its own. Eala's promise was met with overwhelming support from the Filipino people. At the Glorieta Activity Center in Manila, hundreds of fans lined up for hours to see her. The event was a celebration of her Wimbledon run and a chance for fans to meet their hero. Attendees included an 80-year-old retired nurse, wheelchair-bound and attached to oxygen tubes, who had a sign taped to his wheelchair that read, "Hi, Eala. I got better because you are an inspiration to all Filipinos. Thank you. I'm so grateful that I am able to share my triumphs, most especially my recent run at Wimbledon, with the country," Eala said at the palace. As we say, this is our victory. President Marcos praised Eala's discipline and mindset, noting how she immediately focused on her next goal after victories. That is a sign of a true fighter, a true champion, he said. You allow yourself to be happy for 3 minutes, and then you start thinking about your next match. The promise was not just about tennis. It was about a nation of 110 million people finally having a champion to call their own. It was about a young woman who refused to accept limitations and proved that anything is possible. At the fan meet, Eala shared her definition of courage, a word that had taken on new meaning after her Wimbledon run. Courage, to me, looks like showing up every day. It looks like showing up after you've had a loss, showing up after you've had a long day, or maybe something else is not going right in other aspects of your life, Eala said. For me, it's like showing up when you need to be there. This was the same courage that had allowed her to save 2 set points against IGA Swiatek on center court. The same courage that had made her the first Filipino to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam. The same courage that had inspired a nation. And her promise to continue representing the Philippines was a reflection of that courage. A reminder that success is not just about winning, but about the people you inspire along the way. I'm so happy that it's finally coming together. It's been a dream to have a home tournament, and just on the WTA stage in general, Eala had said. I think it's a huge step for tennis in the Philippines and women's tennis. Eala's promise was not just a statement. It was a declaration of intent. A reminder that champions are not defined by their victories, but by the people they inspire along the way. I cannot begin to describe how overjoyed I am to see how my progress has been received by the Filipino people, Eala said at Malacañang Palace. It warms my heart because I know that it comes from a profound and shared love for our nation. And with those words, Eala had made a promise that would define her legacy. A promise that left the entire tennis world speechless. From the cracked courts of Quezon City to world number 28. From being a 13-year-old girl alone in Spain to a national hero celebrated by presidents and adored by millions. From being told she couldn't do it to standing on the brink of Grand Slam glory. Eala has defied every expectation, and she has promised to continue carrying the Philippine flag wherever she goes. Laban lang. Always. And remember, on RallyVerse, we bring you the stories that define the sport, the drama, the promises, the moments that change everything. Stay tuned for more.